Okay, hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to demo the budget application using the example personal budget we created in the previous video. This won't be a deep dive into the application features or budgeting itself, but more of a quick start guide to give people familiar with budgeting a first look at the application so they can see what it is and what it does using the example personal budget, which is pre-filled with information and ready to calculate. I'll start with an overview of the application and the sheets that comprise the budget template, including the budget sheet and two other sheets called the notes and settings sheets. Then I'll demonstrate the calculations the application can make, including calculating what we call budget reports and calculating a statement of financial position. And then lastly, I'll demonstrate the error checking the application performs to make sure a budget sheet is ready to calculate and how to resolve any errors should they arise. Switching over to my browser, I have the example personal budget open from the previous video. Sheet 1 is left over from the budget creation process and not needed, so it can be deleted. Starting with an overview of the application, the entire application consists of the menu at the top and the sheets in the tabs at the bottom of the page. When a budget template is created, the application creates three sheets which are permanent, including the budget sheet and the notes and settings sheets, which are initially hidden from view as they're rarely needed, and I'll show these to you shortly. Budget information is entered in the budget sheet, and then when a budget is calculated, depending on the calculation made, the application will create other sheets on demand, including budget report sheets and the statement of financial position sheet. Each sheet has a purpose, and it's important not to rename the existing sheets or add any new sheets, as this may create an error, but the application will notify you of any errors if they occur. To navigate between sheets, clicking the horizontal lines at the bottom left corner will display a list of all the sheets in the spreadsheet. Sheets which are hidden, meaning they're not displayed in a tab at the bottom of the page, are shown in a light grey colour. To show a sheet, you can click on it in the list, and if I click on the notes sheet, you can see it appears with a tab at the bottom of the page. Or you can use the menu by navigating to Sheets, Show, and selecting the sheet you want to display, or you can select All to show all sheets, and if I select the settings sheet, you can see it also appears in a tab at the bottom. Once the sheets are visible, navigating between the sheets is simply a matter of clicking between the sheet tabs, or you can select a sheet from the All Sheets list, or again, you can display a sheet using Show in the menu. Similarly, if you want to hide sheets that are not needed, you can click the down arrow to the right of the sheet name and select Hide Sheet, and I'll do this to hide the notes sheet, which disappears from the bottom. Or again, using the menu, you can navigate to Sheets, Hide, and select the sheet you want to hide, or select All to hide all sheets, and if I select the settings sheet, again it also disappears. Moving on to the notes and settings sheets, these sheets generally stay hidden and are only accessed if needed. The notes sheet is a blank sheet to be used for keeping any notes and calculations, and in the notes sheet in my budget, for example, I use a formula to calculate what I need to budget for fuel for my car, considering the cost of fuel and kilometres I need to drive. The settings sheet contains all the application settings, which I'll be covering throughout the course as they apply. Moving on to the budget sheet. The budget sheet is where all the budget information is entered to create a detailed financial plan and consists of 5 tables which include the reports, accounts, income, non-debt expenditure and debt expenditure tables. In each table, if you click a table heading or subheading, a note is displayed with a description of what the table or table column is for. I cover how to enter information into each of the tables later in the course, but in general, the reports table is for managing the reports produced when the budget reports are calculated. The accounts table is for entering the current balances of bank accounts. The income table is for entering income. The non-debt expenditure table is for entering expenditure which isn't a debt. And the debt expenditure table is for entering expenditure which is a debt. Looking at the tables, each row in a table is a separate item, whether that be a separate bank account, item of income or expenditure, depending on the table you're working in, and each item is identified by a type, category, and description. This is an example personal budget populated with personal account income and expenditure categories, but if we created a business budget template from the menu, it would contain business account income and expenditure categories. And the combined personal and business budget template contains both the personal and business categories. If starting with a blank budget template, the process for completing a budget is to work through the tables from top to bottom, first entering account balances, then income, then expenditure, enabling and entering information for the items that apply and leaving the items that don't disabled. Disabled items not being used are set to hide and exclude in the two columns to the far left and won't be considered when the budget is calculated. And to make the budget easier to view, disabled items can be hidden from view by selecting Budget, Hide, Hidden Items from the menu. The category and description for an item can be edited if needed, and if you need to add an item category, you can select a cell or cells in a table, and then select Budget, Insert Items from the menu, and blank items will be inserted into the table ready to be filled out. I can then delete the blank items or other item categories by selecting them and then selecting Budget, Delete Items from the menu. Income and expenditure item payments can be configured to start on a certain date, finish on a certain date, repeat at a set interval, or apply as a one-off payment. Income and expenditure items can be categorized as fixed or variable, and expenditure items also as a want or need. Debt expenditure items can be entered with a starting debt balance, interest rate, and ongoing fee, which is then used to calculate the date the debt is due to be repaid and the current balance of a debt when calculating a statement of financial position. As an example, looking at the top three items of the income table, you can see the first item is a one-off payment for a $500 business invoice due to be paid on the start date into the online payments account, and the next two items are for a repeating salary payment of $1,320 paid every 2 weeks from the start date into the online payments account with the gross income and tax withholdings entered separately. The income table has been designed around a parent with children living in Australia who's employed, operating small business, and receiving government support. The table has been made deliberately complex to show the budget application's potential to manage complex finances and includes a combination of salary income, business income, and government benefit income with corresponding negative amounts to reduce the benefit income as required by the government for the salary and business income received. If you click on a negative benefit reduction value, looking to the top left, you'll see it's calculated using a function which allows us to calculate the benefit reduction by applying the government rules to the salary and business income. Once the budget sheet has been filled out, the budget is ready to be calculated. And if you select Calculate from the menu, you have the option to calculate either the budget reports or a statement of financial position. Starting with the budget reports, a budget report is a forecast of your financial situation calculated from the information in the budget sheet, which you can use to plan your spending in detail. The process to calculate the budget reports is to first, in the budget sheet, set the start date to the date you want to start the calculation from. Then in the reports table, set the report items you want calculated to include, and I'm going to calculate budget reports for a 1 week, 3 month, and 1 year period, where the period is the length of time into the future from the start date a budget report will be calculated, and the interval is how often the cash flow forecast is updated in the cash flow chart, which I'll show you when the reports are calculated. Next, we need to update the balances in the accounts table to be current for the start date. And because this is an example budget, I'll leave the balances as they are, but if this was my own budget, I would look up and enter the current balances from my banking app. Then select Calculate Budget Reports from the menu. What's happening now is the application is creating a separate budget report sheet for each item in the reports table set to include, and adding this in a new tab at the bottom of the spreadsheet. I'll wait for the calculation to finish and then show you a budget report. and the calculation is now complete. At the bottom of the spreadsheet, you can see there are now 3 additional tabs for a 1 week, 3 month, and 1 year budget report. To navigate, you can click between the tabs and use the arrows far right to scroll to a tab that isn't visible. Or alternatively, you can click the All Sheets icon bottom left and select the sheet you want to view from the list, which is what I normally do. Looking at the 1 week budget report sheet, the report details are at the top of the page, including the report period, the interval, the start date, and the calculation date and time, followed by a cash flow chart and summary of income and expenditure from the start date for the report period into the future. The cash flow forecast is a forecast of the total balance of your included accounts, considering the starting balance of included accounts and the planned income and expenditure for the report period taken from the budget sheet. Income and expenditure is summarised by account names, so spending can be planned per account, such as weekly spending for purchases made using a cash or card. The other budget reports look exactly the same except they're for a longer period. Being able to calculate multiple budget reports for different timeframes enables you to manage your finances over the short term and long term, plan your weekly and monthly spending in detail, check for any future cash flow issues, and analyse your overall income, expenditure, and financial goals in a 1 year budget report. Now, if you wanted to drill down into the detail and inspect the individual items of income and expenditure that compose a budget report, you can view the budget report data sheets, which were shown being generated when the budget reports were calculated. The budget report data sheets are hidden by default, and to show these sheets, you can click the All Sheets icon bottom left and select the sheets you want to view, or using the menu, select Sheets, Show, Budget Report Data to show all budget report data sheets. Looking at the 1 week budget report data sheet, the report details are at the top of the page, including the report period, the interval, the start date, and the calculation date and time, followed by a data table which, moving from left to right, includes the numerical values from the cash flow chart in the budget report sheet, the total expenditure and income per interval, which in this case is per day, as this report has a 1 day interval, and the individual date-stamped items of expenditure and income for the period. Having access to the budget report data is particularly helpful when inspecting the cash flow chart in a budget report to understand what may be causing a future drop in expenditure or a cash flow issue. So for example, looking at the 3-month cash flow chart, if we wanted to know the expenditure causing a reduction in our total balance of accounts on this particular day, we can hover our mouse on the blue bar in question and note the date displayed, or we can read the date from the axis at the bottom of the chart. Then if we go to the budget report data sheet and find the date in the list of individual expenditure items, we can see the expenditure planned for this date and the significant items of expenditure causing the reduction in our total account balance. Then if needed, we can look at options in our budget to either reduce or reschedule the expenditure for this particular day to resolve any issue, and then recalculate the budget reports to see the effect on our cash flow. Moving on to the statement of financial position. A statement of financial position, also known as a balance sheet, is a financial statement that summarises a person's or business's overall financial position at a particular point in time, including their assets, which is what they own, their liabilities, which is what they owe, their equity, which is their assets less their liabilities, and their income, expenditure, and cash flow. A statement of financial position is typically used to track a person's or business's ongoing financial performance and health, as well as apply for or negotiate financial products such as loans. The process to calculate a statement of financial position is to first, in the budget sheet, set the start date to the date you want to start the calculation from, and I'll leave this set to today's date. Next, as we did when calculating the budget reports, update the balances in the accounts table to be current for the start date. And again, because this is an example budget, I'll leave the balances as they are. But if this was my own budget, I would look up and enter the current balances from my banking app. Then select Calculate Statement of Financial Position from the menu. The application is now calculating a 1-year budget report in a new tab at the bottom of the spreadsheet, and will then calculate the Statement of Financial Position in a separate tab. The budget report is calculated first, so the 1 year cash flow, income, and expenditure data from the budget report can then be added to the statement of financial position. And I'll just wait for this calculation to complete. So now looking at the statement of financial position, the calculation date and time is at the top right of the sheet, followed by a details table for entering personal or business details, then an assets table for entering the value of various assets, then a liabilities table, which is pre-filled with the current balance of the debts calculated from the information entered in the budget sheet, then the cash flow chart and income and expenditure tables from the 1 year budget report, and lastly, a financial summary table. Additional categories can be added to the details, assets, and liabilities tables by right-clicking a row and selecting Insert Row. In the income, expenditure, and summary tables, the sum of amount column on the left shows the annual values, and the column on the right the equivalent periodic values. This period can be changed using the Show Totals drop-down list at the top right. So if I select yearly, for example, you can see the values on the left match the values on the right. And if I select weekly, the right column shows the annual total as a weekly value. Okay, the last thing I should cover is error checking. When either the budget reports or a statement of financial position are calculated, the application checks the included items in the budget sheet for errors and warnings to ensure all information is present and entered correctly and the budget is ready to calculate. If there's an issue in the budget sheet, the application will tell you. So for example, if I delete some information in the budget sheet and then calculate the budget reports, the application will first check the budget sheet for issues such as missing data, and if it finds something, display an alert to tell me. It then displays a messages sheet with a description of each issue along with a reference to the cell in the budget sheet, as well as highlights the cells with issues in the budget sheet and inserts the issue description as a note in the cell. Resolving errors is just a case of addressing the error per the issue description. So if I hover my mouse on this cell, the note tells me I need to pick a value from the list. The note in this cell tells me I need to enter an account name of an included account from the accounts table. In this cell, I need to enter a number. And obviously, the notes in the table subheadings provide further direction as to what the cells are for and the information that needs to be entered. If you delete something in the budget sheet by accident or want to reverse a change, you can either use the undo button, or if you click File, Version History, See Version History in the menu, this will display a version history of all the previous changes, and you can restore the version prior to the change being made. Or if you're working with the example personal budget and want to start with a clean slate, you can recreate the example personal budget by selecting Create Personal Budget from the menu and then entering Delete in capital letters, and the existing budget will be deleted and replaced with a new budget. If you need further support, we can be contacted using the contact form on our website, and the link to our website is in the description. That concludes the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.